While the rest of the Voyager crew are helping with repairs, Kim, Chakotay, and Kes leave on an away mission for the M-class planet's surface. What they find is surprising, to say the least. Hey everyone, this is TH Stories 80, where we narrate fanfiction audiobooks. Now we begin Chapter 3 of Voyager Lost. Let's dive in. Planet designated M7Y635. Kim and Chakotay were seated in the two pilot chairs, with Kes positioned behind Chakotay. As the shuttle slowed and settled into a standard orbit over the planet, the small ship immediately began scanning the surface. Kes rose from her seat, stepped forward, and rested her hands on the backs of the pilot chairs, her gaze fixed on the displays embedded in the console. "Harry?" Chakotay prompted, tapping at the controls. "I'm setting a course for a vegetation-dense cove 3 kilometers away from the nearest town." "Understood," Kim replied as he studied the screen. It displayed a smooth, light blue lake ringed by tall grass and showed no humanoid life signs. Since the shuttlecraft lacked their transporter module, landing was their only option, and it had to be done out of sight. They would need to approach in a way that kept them unseen by the natives below. Kim quickly confirmed that their descent vector would avoid prying eyes, then entered the final commands. The shuttle banked smoothly before angling toward the planet's atmosphere. With secrecy a priority, Chakotay knew a flyover would be ill-advised. It risked violating the Prime Directive. As it was, they were already towing the line between exploration and breaking General Order 1. 10 minutes later, the shuttle settled onto the surface, its landing gear locking into place before the engines powered down. Chakotay notified Voyager that they had landed and prepared to head toward the town. "Be careful," Janeway's voice came through the subspace radio. Chakotay acknowledged the warning with a nod before rising from his seat. The main display powered down as he turned and moved toward the rear of the shuttle, with Kes following close behind. She wore a purple shirt beneath a cream-colored, knee-length tunic, along with a band around her head to conceal the pointed tips of her ears. Her companions were dressed in loose-fitting shirts and trousers, along with all of them wearing coats. Chakotay pressed a control panel button, opening the rear hatch, and the three of them filed out in a single file. Their boots sank slightly into the soft ground as the tall grass bent beneath their weight. Once they were clear, the shuttle's hatch automatically sealed shut. Kim withdrew his tricorder and logged the location, orienting himself toward the town. "We'll split up once we reach the town," Chakotay instructed as they moved away from the shuttle. "It'll let us cover more ground in less time. Kes, you and Harry check for any edible produce. I'll survey the rest of the town." "Understood," Harry responded, doing his best to mask his disappointment. He felt he would have been more useful aboard Voyager, assisting Janeway, rather than participating in what he privately considered a wild goose chase. They had arrived in another time and reality, and the captain needed every available hand to help find a way home. He cast a glance at Kes, who scanned the grasslands and distant trees, her eyes occasionally drifting toward the mountains hundreds of kilometers away, the same range they had passed over during their descent. "Set your tricorders to a wide-spectrum continuous scan," Chakotay added, adjusting the settings on his own device before slipping it back into the interior pocket of his coat. "We'll analyze the data once we're back on Voyager. I don't want the natives aware of our technology." "Understood," Kim replied, pulling out his tricorder and configuring it for continuous scanning before sliding it back into his coat. Kes had done the same. Once the devices were set, the three Voyager crew members paused briefly, surrounded by tall, motionless grass. Overhead, clouds filtered the sunlight, casting the land in muted tones. There wasn't even a hint of a breeze as they reached a gravel trail that curved gently ahead, guiding them toward the nearby town. After some time, the entrance to the settlement came into view. Several houses clustered together on the outskirts, while further in, stone-walled, 4-story buildings rose above the rest, dominating the village's interior. The town of Prine, 1430 hours. While the Voyager crew made their way toward the town, Dr. Jennifer Keller worked inside one of the interior buildings, wearing gloves and a face mask. A nurse handed her a small, rectangular clear strip. Keller placed it on her gloved finger, turned slightly on her seat, and asked the child sitting to her left to open her mouth. "Say ah," she instructed, smiling beneath the mask as the 9-year-old girl complied. The doctor's short, shoulder-length blonde hair framed her face, highlighting her brown eyes as she gently placed the strip on the girl's tongue. Once it settled there, Keller smiled again when the child said she felt a tingling sensation. "That's a good thing," Keller reassured her. The girl stood, she was beaming, and moved past her with a wave. Keller watched as the child rushed to a middle-aged, red-haired woman and clasped her hand. Together they waved at Keller before leaving through another doorway. She saw them pass one of the many windows before turning her attention to the middle-aged man who had taken the seat. A young man in a blue shirt, the town doctor, sat beside her and read out the man's name while making a mark in the town register. He then reached into a metal case embossed with the logo of the Atlantis Expedition and removed a numbered rectangular container. After writing the number next to the man's name, he opened it, took out a clear blue strip, and handed it to Keller. The line in front of her had thinned considerably since she had begun administering the medicine earlier that morning. The villagers had been scheduled at staggered times across 3 different sites, and now this town's distribution was nearly complete. Keller knew the other towns were already finished, and that the other doctors would be joining her here shortly before returning to Atlantis through the Stargate in the forest south of the village. "Dr. Keller," a portly man with a goatee called as he edged past the remaining people in line and approached her. "Once again, thank you for taking the trouble for all of this." He gestured toward the line before looking back at her. "It seems the other doctors your people sent have completed their tasks as well." "There's no trouble at all, Counselor Atine," Keller replied, glancing up at him as he slipped his hands into his trouser pockets and surveyed the room. She administered the strip to the next person in line, then looked back at him. "I believe you've already taken the treatment with Dr. Halley. You're not experiencing any side effects?" "Just drowsiness," he answered with a nod, briefly glancing at the 4 armed guards in the room. "I've already documented some cases of fever, joint pain, and rashes," added the town doctor, Dr. Milas, as Counselor Atine turned toward him. "I have medication prepared for those symptoms, but nothing has been severe enough to require it." "Your people's immune systems are being rebuilt," Keller explained as she placed another strip on the tongue of a teenage girl. Upon contact, the strip began to dissolve slowly with a faint fizzing sensation. The girl rose from the seat, replaced by another young woman. "We learned about your world from an ally of ours, and well, here we are. I wish your people had been here when it happened," Milas murmured. Keller was about to respond, but Milas continued quickly, adding that he hadn't meant to sound ungrateful and that he was relieved the wraith known as Michael was dead. "Still, if you'd found us sooner, maybe things could have been different." "Over 2,000 died after the initial infection across all the towns," Keller said, recalling the report recovered from Michael's database 3 years earlier after Atlantis returned to the Pegasus Galaxy. "Another 400 succumbed to illnesses worsened by compromised immune systems." She met Milas's gaze, sadness flickering in her eyes, then looked up at Counselor Atine before drawing a steady breath. "We developed this cure after studying survivors of the modified Hoffan plague for over a year. Our projections showed it would take 1 strip every 2 weeks for a year, and the data supports that. The traces of the drug in your blood work have been steadily declining. We'll take another sample next week, and we're hopeful it will show full remission. And you're not alone. There are 14 other worlds receiving this treatment, and it's proven effective at eradicating the Hoffan plague." Milas nodded slowly and exhaled as Keller continued administering the medicine to the next person. "Just thank you," Counselor Atine said quietly. Keller looked up at him, smiled, and then turned her attention back to the elderly man who had just taken the seat. Entrance to proceed. Chakotay, Kim, and Kes looked around at the crowds moving about their own business. In the midst of the throngs of people, they caught the sweet scent of local flowers arranged on a stall near a cluster of hatch-top buildings close to the entrance. The fragrance mingled with that of various other plants, and Kes smiled before drifting toward the stall. Meanwhile, Harry scanned the passers-by with his tricorder, while Chakotay subtly positioned himself to block any clear view of the small device. A minute later, as Kes began walking back toward them, the tricorder chirped softly with the information they needed. "They're human," Kim murmured. Chakotay glanced over his shoulder at the young officer just as Kes joined them and commented that the flowers smelled wonderful. She went on to explain that the purple variety with orange highlights was edible, while the others had been gathered from a nearby forest. By the time she finished, Kes noticed the look of confusion on Kim's face and the alert way Chakotay was surveying the crowd. "Harry? Commander?" she asked. "These people are human," Kim repeated, slipping the tricorder away as he stared at Kes in disbelief before turning to Chakotay. "How? There are historians on Earth who believe ancient aliens came to this galaxy and seeded many different worlds with their genetic code," Chakotay explained, cutting Kes off. "That's why there are planets in the Alpha Quadrant with humanoid populations. Life on those worlds then evolved to suit their environments." Kes nodded thoughtfully as the three of them moved deeper into the village. They soon split up, with Kes and Kim heading one way, while Chakotay veered off in another direction. The Starfleet officer intended to explore the outskirts of the town, while Kes and Kim focused on the market at its center. They wove through the bustling crowd, pausing at stalls that sold goods brought in from nearby towns and fertile farms. As Kes examined arm-length stacks of vegetables, she leaned closer to Kim and whispered, "I could really use the soil these plants were grown in, Harry." "We'll make a stop before heading back to Voyager," Kim replied quietly. Kes nodded before asking the young man behind the stall for directions to the farm. Kim added that they were interested in purchasing more than what was currently available. As the merchant began discussing the terms of a trade, Kim glanced past the stall-keeper's left shoulder. His attention lingered on a table piled with what appeared to be fish, while another merchant nearby displayed several cages of different animals. While Kes gathered information about the farm and the possibility of acquiring soil and plants, Kim shifted his attention away from the cages and the grunting, boar-like creatures within them. He leaned toward Kes and mentioned that he was going to check the adjacent stall. She acknowledged him with a nod. He trusted that the tricorders were quietly collecting readings on the people, animals, and plants. Data they could separate once they returned to Voyager. And then back to our own reality, Kim reflected. As he approached the neighboring merchant, the tricorder continued its silent work while Kim visually scanned his surroundings. He heard Kes laugh and glanced over his shoulder to make sure she was alright. She was smiling as she accepted a purple, leafy stalk, lifting it to her nose. Reassured, Kim turned his attention back to the counter filled with different varieties of fish. Before he could speak to the merchant, movement at the edge of his vision caught his attention. Several individuals stood out from the crowd, all dressed in black uniforms. Kim turned, narrowing his eyes as he took them in. Kes soon joined him, having finished her inquiries just as the figures separated. One of them, a blonde woman with brown eyes, began walking in their direction. Kim studied her black vest and black and grey patterned uniform. As she passed, her gaze met his, and she offered a brief smile. Flustered, Kim returned the smile with an awkward nod. Kes watched him with amusement and chuckled softly. As the woman moved past, Kim noticed the patch on her left sleeve, and he froze. Once she turned away, his mouth fell open. He stared at Kes in stunned confusion, then glanced back. The woman looked over her shoulder at him again. She gave him another smile before continuing on her way. "Kes, we need to follow her," Kim whispered urgently, gently guiding her along as they kept a short distance behind the woman. "Harry?" Kes asked, puzzled. "Is there something strange about her?" "The patch on her sleeve," he murmured as he tapped the communicator hidden inside his coat. The badge connected him to Chakotay. "Commander, we need to talk. Can you meet us at the rendezvous point?" "What patch?" Kes asked as they matched the soldier's pace, careful not to draw attention. Before Chakotay could respond, he passed the building and glanced through an open window. Inside, he spotted armed individuals in black and grey patterned uniforms guarding an exit. Unknown to him, Keller was inside, working on her latest patient. "Meet me there, now," Chakotay replied, his tone clipped. He continued on casually. Then, once out of sight, lengthened his stride toward the town entrance. Harry, Kes whispered as he maintained a tight grip on her arm. What's going on? Kim tilted his head toward her, keeping his eyes on the soldier ahead. The patch was black and grey, just like her uniform. But I've seen it in its original colors. It's a flag we learned about in elementary school. About old Earth history. Earth? Kes echoed, confused. We're on an alien world in the past. How could anyone be wearing an Earth flag? Maybe it's the Federation emblem, or... It's the flag of the United States, Kim stated quietly. They continued toward the town entrance as the soldier turned onto a gravel path and entered a stone-walled building, joining others waiting at the doorway. Kes glanced back over his shoulder at the soldiers while Kim stared straight ahead, his thoughts racing. How is that possible? He wondered aloud. We could ask them, Kes suggested gently. We need to talk to the commander, Kim insisted. This is the past and... of another reality, Kes reminded him. Doesn't that mean we shouldn't rule out the possibility that people from Earth developed space travel earlier? If that really is an Earth flag, then maybe interstellar travel came sooner in this reality. We still need to talk to the commander and then to the captain, Kim replied as they neared the entrance. This was unexpected. Really, really unexpected. To be continued.